Hello, my name is Sophia, and welcome to The Show Must Go On. So today, I am back, of course, again, to talk about school spirits. I am so excited to make this video because this episode was definitely my favorite episode of the season so far. I know I kind of said that for the fifth one too, but like this one surpassed the fifth one too. Like this episode had me on the edge of my seat. I can't wait any longer for the next one. I have so much to say. Let's just get right into it. So of course, yes, we're talking about season 3, episode 6, Children of the Scorned. So starting off with the plot, going character by character as usual. With Maddie, we see, she's still kind of going crazy, trying to protect Simon and everything. And, she kind of has a moment with, like, Wally, and obviously they're just, like, expressing their, what they're going through, and, they kind of have this, like, moment together, and he kind of comforts her, and, I thought it was, like, sweet and funny when Wally's like, I'm sorry you have to be, like, stuck between two worlds, and she's like, at least I have you in this one. And then he's like, oh, Maddie, that was so cheesy. Then soon after that, we see this little scene where she talks to Simon, and they just have like this really nice like moment where, well, like, at first they're kind of like mad at each other because like they're both wanting to do some crazy thing, to try to figure out more, and they're like worried about each other. But then ultimately, they kind of just like, they basically say to each other, like, okay, we know us, like, we both know we're just gonna do what we want to do because we're both, like, stubborn and, like, we'll just do whatever needs to be done. So they're just, like, supporting each other, but, they kind of have this moment where they're just, like, like Maddie says, like, you saved me so many times, like, I just want to save you back, but Simon is like, you've been saving me since we were 9. Obviously, we know, like, we've been told little things throughout, the whole show of, like, how Maddie and Simon have been such good friends for so long, and, like, how they've, like, helped each other through really, like, hard things and stuff. So it's just, like, really sweet to see this moment between them. And then, like, Maddie says, body snatchers, all this stuff, like, this will be a hilarious story one day. I just think it's so funny, like, even just if you think back to, like, the first episode of the whole show, when they do, like, a flashback of, like, before Maddie got, body snatched, like, and their conversation was, like, all about horror movies, of course, because they love that, and, it's just, like, so crazy to think what they've gone through since then, and how they've literally been living in their own horror movie. Yeah, but I just think, like, this whole show obviously is such a good, like, almost like metaphor for like really close friendships like Maddie and Simon, and how they will literally go to any lengths to like help each other and save each other. I just want to say, like, I really like that Maddie and Simon are just like such a good representation of just like a platonic male and female friendship, because I feel like we don't see that very often in media, and I think it's really important to portray relationships like that. So I just, like, commend the writers for that. Like, I know some people ship them or whatever, but I don't. And I think I'm in the majority of people that don't ship them, because it's just, like, I don't know. It's just so refreshing to, for once, see, like, oh, yeah, a girl and a boy can just be friends and have this really great, like, very close bond, but it's platonic, And I don't know. I just like that this show, I mean, not even just them, but, like, this whole show just kind of shows really, like, interesting different dynamics that maybe sometimes, like, would have stigma about the, like, people like that being together. Like, even, like, Maddie and Wally, like, are very different people, but they have this nice relationship. Claire and Nicole have, like, become friends even though they were very different and stuff. Like, I don't know. I just like that it shows all these, like, nice dynamics that are very, like, not typical and stuff, and kind of sheds light on how, like, really anyone can, like, connect. But anyways, yeah. So then, as for Simon, so obviously we see a lot in this episode with, like, him finally, like, finding out more, like, while he's in the church scar, and, like, he sees the White Eyes memories again, and finally he sees, like, more of it, and figures out that White Eyes is not Van Heidt, but the pastor, of the church. And I'm very happy because I was one of the people that like predicted that White Eyes wasn't Van Height. Well, I didn't know if it was gonna be, I think I said like in my last video, like I wasn't sure if it was gonna be either like White Eyes wasn't Van Height or he was Van Height, but it was gonna turn out that like Van Height wasn't what everyone like thought he was, kind of like, but obviously we know that's not true, but the part of it that White Eyes wasn't Van Height was true. So I am kind of proud of myself because I just got this feeling, like, the fact that they just kept, like, just assuming that he was Van Height, I was like, I don't know. Because I also even said, I think in my last video, I was like, why would he be, like, you know, wanting to, like, show Simon his memories if he was, like, bad, you know? So that never, like, made sense to me. So I'm really glad to see that he's not Van Height. But we also find out that he is alive, just like how Simon is alive and like stuck in the ghost world, because he like cuts his hand just like Simon and it's bleeding. So that is very interesting. I didn't predict that. But yeah, because we know that the pastor did actually survive, and like we see in his memories the day that the flood was happening, like Van Height was there, but he was like yelling at the pastor and saying like, give me my ring, and he was like, I bet the children took it or something, like he's like yelling at him, but that's when like, you know, the pastor like shuts the doors and like, you know, protects them from him. So obviously we still don't really know what was happening with that, like what the deal with the ring was and why it went missing and all this stuff. Somehow the pastor survived the flood, but we know the children didn't. And then we see that he could still see the children after they died, just like Simon could see Maddie. And that kind of shows us, like, I feel like they're really putting like almost like a connection between Simon and the pastor, you know? So that's just like another connection with them, is the fact that like they were both living people that could like see ghosts. We kind of learned that he would, like after they died, he would like visit them still though, because he just like felt so much grief and stuff, and he would like visit them and talk to them, whatever. But then we see that this one like day, you know, Van Height was also there too though, because he was stuck in there and died as well, and you can see everyone's very afraid of him, all the children and everything, because he's really creepy. But then the pastor like opens the doors, and all of a sudden like we see the graveyard, like where Ralph was, and we see the lightning strike and Ralph getting hit. And we basically find out that like, because Simon says to him like, oh, so Van Height got out and then you got trapped. And he says like you had so much grief that it like trapped you there, and you got so lost in like helping other people, which once again is very like mirroring Simon and like everything he did to help Maddie and everything. So yeah, so we know that that's like when the pastor like got stuck, which obviously we still don't completely understand, but that's like kind of a little bit of an explanation for it. And we see that there's all these drawings, because remember we had seen like the drawings and they looked like blood, and now we know that like he is living, so the drawings could be like his blood. And it seems like he was trying to like remember things, because I guess just because he's been there for so long and he's so old, like he was starting to forget some of it. So he was like drawing things to like remember, and we see like there's all these drawings where it's like a devil like with the children and stuff, so obviously we think it's like representing Van Height. And like, you know, I'll go into this like more in the video, but there's just a lot of like devil imagery with like Van Height. So I mean, you know, once again, we'll get into that more later. I don't know if it's trying to say like he's literally like some sort of demon or whatever, or if it's just like trying to represent that like he's evil. And we see a drawing of like Ralph on the ground with like the lightning striking. And then a lot of people think, and I think, which once again I'll get into more in the theories part, that Van Height got out because he went into Ralph's body, and that's why Ralph, you know, disappeared and everything. Because even apparently in one of the drawings of like Ralph, you can also see little like devil horns, almost like representing that Van Height was in his body. We just see like this really powerful scene of Simon saying to him like, I remember you, like I remember everything that happened. And then like the pastor is like roaring. It looks really scary, but I think it's just like, you know, representing like he's been there so long and all his pain and like is just like coming out. And Simon is the first person in like 100 years that is like recognized his existence and like the fact that he was helping the children and everything. And then obviously we see this big, after Simon says all that, this big flood comes in from the window, just like the flood in 1912, and just comes rushing through, and then we see Simon getting taken out by the flood. So obviously I think, so okay, once again, I'm going to get into more of it in the theories part, but I do think that this means that Simon got out of the ghost world. I know some people might be like, but it's only we still have 2 more episodes. But I don't know. I just feel like they might actually want to, like, surprise us. Because, like, a lot of people would just, like, assume that they would, like, wait until the finale for, like, Simon to leave. So I feel like they might actually want to, like, catch us off guard and, like, actually have him get out a little earlier. Just how dramatic that scene was. Like, I feel like he had to have gotten out. Like, I just can't see, after that whole thing, like, it just being like, oh yeah, and then he just popped back up. Like, that would just be so anticlimactic in my opinion, because, like, that was, like, so crazy. So I do think he got out, because also I think the whole thing was, like, you know, by him remembering, like, the pastor and, like, saying all that to him, that was also kind of, like, freeing him, you know, because I think the flood was almost, like, the pastor's version of, like, an exit door. Which is weird though, because we didn't like actually see anything of like the pastor getting like taken out by the flood, but I do also think that like freed him, and then it also freed Simon, because it realized like Simon is also like a living person who isn't supposed to be there, and it like took him out. Although what that's gonna mean for the pastor, I have no idea, because obviously he is technically alive, but he's like extremely old. I mean, also where Simon actually physically got out, I don't know either. I would assume the boiler room. So now just talking about Charlie and Yuri for a quick second, I'm so upset because I was just talking about in my last video that I was finally like Charlie was acting like his normal self again, like not being as like weird to Yuri and stuff, and then he did it again. He was like freaking out again about, I mean, you know, I understand it's terrible that they don't know if they're gonna get, like, trapped in the school forever, but, like, he was freaking out again and, like, being really annoying to Yuri again, and Yuri's like, oh my god, like, I can't even, like, I don't even know what to say to you, and Charlie's like, oh, I get it, I'm just so hard to deal with, and I'm just like, Charlie, can you stop, like, and once again, it's so, like, I hate it, because I love Charlie, and I don't know why he's like acting so weird this season. I mean, once again, I get it. Like, I know Charlie always has been like insecure and like kind of anxious and stuff, but like, I don't know, but it's just like bugging me. So that's why I thought it was funny when Yuri's like kind of calming him down. They're having like a nice moment, but then Charlie for a second is like, wait, I don't know if I'm done freaking out. And then Yuri says, Charlie, respectfully, shut the F up. And I thought that was funny. And then they kiss, and it's like this funny moment too, because we can see that a bunch of boys in the school, like living people, are like just creepily like watching this like young woman who's like working as like a secretary there, but they're standing right in front, so it like it's like showing them kissing, and then it cuts to like the boys like being like, ooh, like, damn, and obviously they're actually reacting to the woman, but like it's funny obviously because it makes it look like they're reacting to Yuri and Charlie kissing, so I thought that was like a funny moment. But yeah, I don't know, leave your thoughts down below too about Charlie, because I just he's just been getting on my nerves, and it's so sad because I love him. But I also have to say too, like, I don't know, like this whole scene, I kind of was like, why am I, like, not shipping Charlie and Yuri as much right now? Like, even though it's crazy, because once again, like, I was, like, one of our biggest fan, like, I loved the ship. Right now, I'm just, like, they just, like, feel so different. Like, not that, obviously, you can't have a relationship where people are, like, very different, but, like, they are just, like, really butting heads right now. Like, I feel like it is so rare that we see them just, like, actually just like having a good time together that I'm like, wait, do I even like this ship right now? Like, I feel like I do. Once again, it's just like because of the circumstances, like, you know, just like how stressful everything is right now. But I don't know, I'll just be interested to see what happens with this whole ship in the future. So now talking a bit about Dr. Hunter Price and Livia. So obviously we see, of course, we knew from the end of last episode that Livia did take Simon's iPad from Maddie's backpack. And she like comes up to Nicole and she's like, I think Maddie left this. And she's like, Simon should really put a password on it. And she's like, no one plays me, Nicole. So we know now at this point she like knows that Nicole really is friends with Maddie and Claire and was kind of like playing her and everything. So not super great. And we also know that she looked through the iPad, so we don't know what she's gonna do with this information. Then I thought it was interesting when in the like town council meeting when they're like talking about the idea of like the school being taken down and like Principal Hartman is like trying to like combat it, and Dr. Hunter Price is like, you know, like saying all this bad stuff about the school, and she's like, who knows, like under the school could be a sinkhole. And I just thought this was like interesting, obviously, because like we know that there is all this like terrible stuff in the school and like below the school, technically, like obviously not exactly a sinkhole, but like, you know, with like the church underneath and, you know, all this dangerous stuff with the ghosts and everything. So like obviously it's just very like interesting to hear her say that. But we still like don't know like what is really happening with her and like why she's so against the school, you know, why she says stuff like this. I do think, you know, because we'll get into like more of what happens in the rest of the episode, I do really think we are gonna see like we're gonna finally find out more about her, I think, in the next 2 episodes. I mean, obviously like we kind of have to at this point because there's only 2 more, but like yeah, I do think we're gonna start to like learn a lot more about her. I feel like they've kind of been like saving like a lot of reveals about her like until the end, so I think a lot of this is gonna finally start making sense, but right now we're still just kind of like, what the heck. And then okay, this is really interesting that I noticed on my rewatch of the episode. So we see that obviously she, at the same time that Maddie and Xavier are going to talk to Kyle, we'll talk about more later, her and Livia are going too, because it seems like she's gonna talk to him, and like they're having a whole conversation, and Livia actually has the picture of Maddie, well, Janet, when she was like in the Xavier's truck, and she's like, look at this picture, like Maddie Nears is doing something weird, all this stuff, and Dr. Hunter Price is like, who cares, Livia? Maddie Nears is small potatoes, like, we need to just focus on, like, getting rid of the school or whatever, like, that's none of my concern. And she's like, you're a lucky girl, Livia, like, because I'm giving you, like, everything I didn't have when I was younger. But what really stands out is she says, you're a lucky girl to her, and we'll talk about more later, but that is something another character says to someone. So yeah, we'll go back to that. She just kind of gives this whole weird like speech to Olivia about like you can only trust yourself, like all this stuff. So, you know, just weird stuff. Yeah. So another character that I think had a very interesting arc in this episode was Mr. Martin. So we kind of see this moment where he sees all the ghosts just like sitting around looking really like dejected, and he's like, come on guys, like no, we're not doing this, we're not giving up, like we've gone through so much, like we've all figured out so much, like we can't just like back down now. And he kind of like, he gives them this whole like very motivational, you know, like speech kind of, and he's like addressing all of them, like, Charlie, you've grown so much, or, like you've been more confident in who you are, Rhonda, you've opened up more and been more trusting, Yuri, you figured out about the keeping things from resetting, like all this stuff. And I thought it was really cool because also they like are sitting in like a circle, and it kind of mirrors back when, like, you know, he used to do like the group with them in like season 1. And so I just thought that was really cool, obviously, because we haven't seen that type of dynamic since season 1. But also, like, I don't know, I just thought this whole scene was like really sweet. And obviously, you know, Mr. Martin has been a very complex character, but once again, I think I have talked about it like throughout my videos, but like I've just been really enjoying his character this season. He has just like had such a interesting like arc, and like, yeah, obviously he's not perfect, but like he even recognizes that like in this moment. He's like, I know, like it's been a dark chapter for me. I don't expect to get my door, but like I think I can help you get yours and stuff like that. So he even like acknowledges, you know, what he's done wrong and stuff. But I just feel like we've seen like so much growth from him. It's just so interesting to see it like after everything that's happened, obviously. And I thought it was interesting that like Rhonda keeps saying like, we don't have our exit doors, like what are we gonna do, we could be trapped here forever. And I keep just being like, why are they all so certain like they don't have their doors? Because they haven't even gone back to check. Because obviously we know Wally saw his door, but that was because he literally just like went back in like after Maddie got her body and like checked and like saw it. Like none of the other ghosts have done that yet. So I don't know why they're all like just so sure that like they don't have their doors. So that just like keeps bothering me because I'm like, you need to go back in and check. And I don't know, maybe some of them don't have it yet, but like I just think it's weird that they're like acting like it's a complete fact. I'm like, you haven't gone back in. So obviously I'm interested to see if we see by the end of the season like other people seeing their doors or whatever. And then obviously, so you know, we see he's like, come on guys, like we gotta figure stuff out. And they all like go back into the church scar. And then Rhonda's like looking in the water, and then she gets grabbed in, and then they all fall in, and then Mr. Martin falls in with her. And so the same thing happens where they get sucked into the library. We still don't really understand like why this happens, why specifically they get sucked into the library. Someone does have a theory on that I'm going to talk about in the theories portion. And then we see too that Mr. Martin now knows about Wally having his door, because there's one point where Wally's like, you know, I'm going back, you know, to the church scar, like I don't have my watch because I think Simon had it or something, and Mr. Martin's like, you shouldn't go alone, and he goes with him. So then obviously when they have to go through Wally's scar, like he sees it, and he kind of has this moment where he talks to him and he's like, you know, are you gonna tell the others? And you know, like if you have your door, like you have to go through it, whatever. But obviously Wally's like, I can't. But I just think it's interesting that, you know, now both Simon and Mr. Martin know about Wally's door, and I'm wondering when everyone else will find out, and I have a feeling it's going to be kind of soon, and I'm a little nervous actually for what's going to happen. So now, the moment we've all been waiting for, I am finally talking about Van Height, aka Casey Jensen. So yes, so obviously, first of all, we see, you know, in the beginning of the episode, Xavier telling Kyle about the fact that he was body snatched, which is obviously a lot to swallow. And we find out from Nicole and Claire, they did a bunch of research, and Van Height, like, you know, in 1912, was like a very powerful figure in the town and owned a bunch of stuff. Like he owned like a bank and like all these different shops and stuff. So he was just very powerful. And yeah, we now find out that he's going by KC Jensen instead of Kyle. He has like a dairy company, and he's, you know, gonna fund the school's closing, because we see him at the town council meeting. And then we also see, you know, we get to see the creepy nurse in the hospital again, and like Dave and Kyle talking to her. And she says, because, you know, Kyle tells her about how he was body snatched, and she's like, oh, so it was you that he took. And they're like, what? And she says that around the time Kyle got stuck there, she saw that like the door to her scar was open, even though like she didn't go in it. And she died like in an elevator, I guess. So her scar is like in this elevator, and she saw that it was open. And she just like had a feeling that someone beyond our world got in, and she said like she could just feel something dark, but she never knew like who it was, you know, whatever. So now she's finally like making the connection that it must have been whoever came in through her scar was like the one who took Kyle's body. And then obviously we see Maddie and Xavier talking to him at his house, and it's very creepy in this whole scene. I mean, it was great, but I was also just like so nerve-wracking. Oh, and I also just have to say, seeing like Kyle older and like seeing that it is played by the same actor and they just like aged him up, I thought that was so cool. And I thought the actor Ari Delbert does a really great job with this, because obviously he had a really hard thing to play. Like he has to play Kyle as a teenager, and then this like older version, but also actually a different person and all this stuff. So I thought that was really cool. But, you know, we see him, he's really creepy, he's playing this creepy, like, old music. He has guns in his house, all this stuff. And, you know, they kind of finally, like, reveal to him that they know, you know, he knows something about ghosts, whatever, and he's like, I haven't the foggiest notion what you're talking about. So once again, just another, like, creepy thing. Like, obviously he's using this very old-fashioned saying and stuff. And then, you know, we finally get the reveal that he is Van Heidt because Maddie sees he has Van Height's ring on. And, you know, he gets very angry looking, and he's like, he just starts saying this really cryptic, creepy thing where he's like, you know what I've learned about getting older is you start to outlast every single consequence, or something like that. Something really weird. Dr. Hunter Price rings the doorbell, and he goes to seemingly answer it, but then he actually makes a run for it, and is running through the freaking corn maze, which obviously we see is why the whole episode is, like, named after Children of the Corn. And, you know, I thought that whole set was so cool and creepy. And yeah, so he's running through, and Maddie chases after him, and then Xavier and Claire and Nicole are trying to, you know, find both of them. But obviously we see that Maddie starts to once again go into one of her weird visions, and, like, she sees Van Height, like, as actually Van Height, not, like, Kyle. But it's, like, in the boiler room once again, and she seems to have an exit door again. And he says, like, you are one lucky lady, just like Dr. Hunter Price said to Livia. And then he's, like, opening the door, and then he shoots himself in the foot, and then goes through the door. And then we see that, you know, Maddie's, like, out of the vision. Everyone finally catches up to her. She's holding, well, Kyle's body, and he's, like, bleeding, obviously, from his leg, and she says, he's gone. That's how it ends. Obviously, I mean, I know people have said mixed things. I mean, I think most people have agreed, like, we don't really think she meant, like, he's gone by, like, Kyle being dead, because I don't think you would die just from your foot getting shot. Like, it's not like he shot himself in, like, the heart or something, like, really fatal. I think she just meant it in the sense of, like, Van Height is gone. Like, because obviously I think he just shot his foot, because to get, like, a spirit out of a body, you need to, like, have, like, this big, like, sudden, like, thing happen, like, when, like, they got Mr. Martin out of Mr. Anderson's body by, like, pushing him, like, off the chair or whatever. So I think she just means, like, oh, like, Van Height's spirit is gone, and, like, now we don't know where he is and all this. But, yeah, so obviously this whole thing is really weird. The fact that he just, like, ran off, what her whole, like, vision meant is really weird. Like, why he was going through, like, an exit door, why he said, you're one lucky lady. You know, this whole thing is really weird. But once again, I'm gonna get more into it in the theories portion. And then just two little other, like, funny moments I liked in this episode was, like, in the beginning, when Claire and Nicole are saying to Xavier and Maddie, like, oh yeah, we, like, did a lot of research and studying last night, and Xavier's like, for a test? And she's like, no, not for school, don't be dumb. And then Nicole and Claire come, like, to the school when Xavier and Maddie are about to leave, and they're like, we're coming, you know, like, you need more people, like, protection. And Nicole's like, yeah, like, what is Xavier gonna do to protect you? Brood at him? Okay, so now I'll be giving my little review of the episode. So I give this episode a 10 out of 10. Perfect, no notes, amazing. Yeah, I love this episode so much. Like I said, there was just so much information that we learned in this, and I liked that it was pretty scary. Like, I mean, there have been obviously some pretty scary moments, like, especially throughout this season, but, like, I feel like this was the first episode where I was, like, genuinely, like, I literally feel like I was, like, holding my breath, like, a lot of the episode, and I was like, oh my god, like, especially with, like, when Maddie and Xavier were, like, going to Van Height's house, and, like, running through the maze and everything. Like, it was so scary. So yeah, I just love that. I really like how they've been like leaning into the horror genre and everything. Like, I just think it's been really cool. So the highlights I said of this episode were the little scene with Mr. Martin. Once again, I thought that was just really sweet and very like full circle, because also especially like, you know, we see like in season 1 and season 2 they're very much like, oh, like, you know, they're upset about the whole group thing and they're like, Mr. Martin didn't help us, like, you know. But now it's like, it's kind of almost like circling back to that and showing a moment where it's almost like he's having the group again, but he actually is helping them and like doing something nice for them. So I thought that was cool. And then obviously just like learning more about the pastor and that whole thing was really interesting. Learning a little bit more about the nurse and like what she had to say. Oh yeah, because I forgot to even go into the whole thing that she said that, because they were like, how would he like have gotten into your scar like someone else from the outside? And she's like, there's another way. And she's like, I'll show you. And then they're like going through the hall, but then like we don't see anything else. But obviously this is interesting because we're starting to think maybe there's kind of like almost like passages, like a way to get from like the hospital to the school or whatever. The Maddie and Simon moment, once again, I thought was really sweet. Obviously just everything about Van Heidt that we find out is obviously the best part of this episode. And then of course I just thought the whole ending was great, like, you know, everything with the maze and, you know, Van Heidt getting out and whatever, like that was just so intense. And I was like literally, like, of course, like every episode I'm always like really like, oh, we have to wait a week now, but like this episode I was like so mad. Like I was like, no, like I could feel the credits like coming and I was like, no, because like I wanted to see so bad like if Simon got out, you know, what was happening with the nurse and Kyle and Dave, and then like obviously what happened to Kyle and everything. So now I'm just gonna kind of show a few little editing and cinematography moments that I really liked from this episode. So I thought it was really cool. It was like near the beginning of the episode when Maddie and Xavier are like leaving the hospital, and we see like Maddie's like leaving like down the hallway, but it like starts to pan up to showing like the exit sign in the hospital, and it's like right above Maddie's head. And I thought that was a very interesting shot because obviously I feel like that was kind of like foreshadowing the whole thing with like Van Heidt going through her exit door in the vision and whatever is happening with this whole thing of Maddie having an exit door or whatever. So I thought that was really cool. And then I also just thought the whole, like when the nurse was giving like the story of like when she saw her scar or whatever, like I just liked the way it was shot. Like I just thought it looked so haunting. Like as you can see, it's like all green, and just seeing like the creepy elevator and everything, like I just loved that shot. I also just loved the look of when they started like running into the field and like pumpkins around them and then the maze and everything. Like once again, I just thought it was so cool, and it looked so, like the horror elements of it were so interesting. And then I also just really liked the look near the end when like the flood starts coming in, you know, and like just that shot of like the flood coming in through like the stained glass window. Like I just thought that was such a like scarily beautiful shot.